How do you approach a woman when you want to dance with her?
That's a good question. I don't know. Usually I try to at least know who they are. You know what I mean? That's a good start.
I'm comfortable being forward when somebody is forward with me.
When I'm interested in someone, whether this would be at a party or any given social space, I will just try to treat them as I would treat anyone else. And if I feel like they may be interested, then for me it would just be okay, well, I'm going to try to engage this person in a conversation and just try to feel it out to the best of my ability. Obviously, that has failed in some circumstances, but that's just sort of been my approach. Just really slow and steady, trying to read into things as much as possible to the point where I'm overthink everything.
How are you gonna know yes or no under the spring fling tent? Or just anywhere, any party or something where there's loud music,
Right. That's a problem.
And people are drunk, and people are yelling and shit.
It seems to me that what it means for people to be consenting in the social landscape we have now is basically that two people or more negotiate with one another how to maximize each other's pleasure.
I mean, forget about the word consent. You're establishing rapport. You're establishing just mutual respect. But again, what do I really know? Here I'm thinking that I've got that going for me, and that I'm a good listener, but it's not always the case. So I think, maybe what you said, maybe I do have to restrain myself a little bit.
And I didn't even say that, but I'm asking, I guess, because that's kind of the question that I'm starting to ask myself.
My role, I think I'm also a PC, so it's just to be super cognitive of the people, of my residents especially, of the women I know, especially the women of color I know. There's some very sus people on this campus, and overly aggressive men.
That, for a lot of men, that's the last barrier. Once you give the first yes, that doesn't mean yes to everything, you know what I mean? And a lot of guys get confused. They'll be like, what? I was I thought this girl's into me. Why didn't you know what I mean? That's why I will say I think there needs to be some level of judgment on behalf of men. Yes doesn't mean yes to everything. There should be probably multiple check-ins if there's anything I've learned.
I think that's the important thing about the dance floor, is that maybe the idea of reading someone physically is actually an impossible thing, and that people are always communicating so many things at once. I mean, just in general, the social sphere, the public sphere, is one where you're addressing everybody. So where you're dancing is you're addressing all the people in the room at once. So no one is getting the specific no one is getting a specific or very meaningful relation to you. It's more of a ritualized persona that you're doing for everybody.
I've probably creeped someone out at some point, but I've never been actively told it. It's always kind of been in retrospect, oh, I probably creeped this person out, and that's not going to happen again.
How do you avoid it? Is it
By
possible?
just not showing up to things most of the time.
There's got to be something in between.
There is an in between I've found. I came here in hopes that one of the fine people in this conversation would have knowledge of an in between, because I don't.
So there are no not that there are no, but it's more a question of not who's the creepy guy. It's who the creepy action comes from. So that there is no good guy. You know what I mean? All potential actions are vested in every single person. So every single person, no matter how good, it's all about the actions. It's what they do. It's not because then you get the issue of but he's a really good guy, which doesn't unhappen anything that's happened.
The fact that especially with hookup culture, it's a lot of it is based on sort of using each other just physically, or that you're sort of getting some social points or whatever from a hookup, and I think that's where a lot of the drive to not think about what people actually want come.
You know, I'd say I'd like to think that asking like, oh, would you be okay with this, or like, would it be okay if we hook up, or would it be okay if, you know, like, you like set boundaries? But, you know, even that's not enough sometimes, and like, because dude, there could be more going on there, and it's impossible. No, it's not impossible. It's just.
Is it possible to receive consent in a party setting?
From my experience, yes. But it leads to a conversation on how nonverbal communication, how effective nonverbal communication is in a night party setting.
Yeah, you have the freedom to approach that girl or that guy, but does that subject whom you're approaching right now, do they actually acknowledge their freedoms and their limits? Do they acknowledge that they have the right to be assertive?
To say no.
Yeah, exactly.
It's less of a matter of like the male-bodied person or whoever is pursuing that person, of them being assertive, but also I think it's perhaps even more important the other person. Like, they have agency in this as well. And yeah, we can be assertive, but they also should be assertive. Like, that's not to like say like, oh, it's the onus is entirely on them, but at the same time, I think that there should, like, if you're not communicating like, hey, this is making me uncomfortable, then it's pretty hard for the other person to
and then you're taken
follow,
from your
yeah.
own freedom. Then you're limiting your own freedom by not expressing that, you know,
has to
as
be
a
a conversation.
Exactly.
It has to be. It's a two-party thing, not just one person.
How do you avoid it preemptively? Is it
By
possible?
just not showing up to things most of the time.
There's got to be something in between.
There is an in between I've found. I came here in hopes that one of the fine people in this conversation would have knowledge of an in between, because I don't.
Yeah, well, we're looking for it.
That's too real. It's too real.
I think on one level, looking for it is the in between.
Yeah, but I mean,
There's.
Do you, Jonathan? Does any of your sense of self, as informed by societal visions of masculinity, are you aware of an aggressor, internal, within yourself?
Yes. I'm aware. I'm aware of a bit of an internal aggressor. I'm afraid of my internal aggressor more than anything else. Even though I don't even know if it really exists. I don't think it's ever taken me over, but I'm still very afraid of it. And it, in many cases, just prevents me from talking to women in general.
Overall, this conversation needs to happen, and I don't think it is.
And what is this conversation?
How, if we are very invested on the complexities around rape culture in parties, like how it's perpetuated in parties, how cisgender men or any types of people, but that act aggressive, even though they have good intentions. Like how do we intersect conversations around seduction with conversations around rape culture and around the very bad experiences that which women have gone through in regards to sexual assault, or in the worst cases, sexual violence. And it's kind of heavy for both of them, and it becomes even more heavier when you try to reconcile the two.
While young men like to have a good time. While young men like to have a good time. solution.